Hi, everyone. My name is John Kenny. I'm a Chief Strategy Officer at FCB Chicago, and I'm here to talk about pick, choose, and change, how the scale of decision drives different types of marketing. And I'm going to kind of talk a lot about that. But first, before we talk about marketing, I thought it would be interesting to compare our situation in marketing with the world of physics, because physicists have a problem, and it's a little bit of an embarrassing one. They don't really know how the universe works. I mean, obviously, clearly, hopefully, the universe is working. But one of the things that physicists have long kind of realized is that the laws of the universe have a tendency to vary. If you know, they've known since Newtonian times that everyday objects work in a particular kind of way, according to Newtonian laws. But that when it comes to really big things like gravity, they have their own set of laws when it comes to a universe scale. And then when it comes to subatomic particles, they operate in a totally different set of laws. And all three of these things follow laws, but they follow completely separate laws. And how they all fit together, no one really knows. There's some theories, but it's called the scaling problem. Clearly, the universe works, but depending on what kind of scale, big, small, micro, subatomic, you follow different types of laws, and it makes physicists a little humble. They know they don't understand everything, but they know they understand a lot, but not everything. I think marketers don't have this problem when it comes to humility. I think we live in a world where there is huge disagreement among marketers, and everyone thinks they've got the one and only solution to how marketing works. And you know, it's I think we're living in a very exciting time for marketing. We know more about how consumers make decisions, both from a data perspective, in terms of behavioral economics, in terms of the breakthroughs, in terms of consumer decision making. But with all this excitement comes great debate. And I was at a conference 6 months ago where you have like really top-notch CMOs, like the CMO here of Airbnb, talking about how we're too obsessed with data, we're too obsessed with technology. It's where's the big idea? But then you have other like really amazingly talented CMOs talking about the power of data and how it really kind of gives them credibility in the boardroom. And so, I think one of the challenges that a lot of us in marketing face is that we're talking about work, talking about whether this work is great without first kind of defining what is great marketing. And there's like some really fundamental debates that we're all talking about. What I want to talk about today is different types of consumer decisions. And I think if we understand the different types of consumer decisions, it helps us kind of figure out when these different models of marketing start to make sense. And I'm going to pull from the work of Edna Ullmann Margalit. She is a philosopher deceased now, but her work has been very influential, especially among folks in the world of behavioral economics like Cass Sunstein, talking about how people go about making decisions. And one of the points that Professor Ullmann Margalit made was that there are different types of decisions. There's picks, tiny decisions, choices, complicated decisions, and changes, which are life-changing decisions. And none of them follow the classic rational approach to decision making. If you're talking about tiny picks, this is the world that honestly a lot of marketers live in, where you're trying to decide between Bud Light or Miller Lite. Honestly, it's barely a decision. People kind of get annoyed if you actually kind of tax them on why you prefer one over the other. And this is where things like what music is playing in the background, what brand they're most familiar with, really kind of tiny nudges can have a big impact in terms of what you actually pick. And it's barely considered a choice at all. And then you have other types of decisions where you are spending a little bit more time on them. They're choices, and there's a lot of information, there's a lot of complexity, and you actually want to make a right decision. You want to feel good about it. And this is where you are going to take a lot of those heuristic shortcuts in terms of figuring out what the right decision is for you, so you can feel good about the decision at the back end. And this is where the whole world of kind of user experience and customer experience kind of plays a really big role. And then finally, there's those really big decisions. And when I talk about really big, I mean the kind of decisions you make maybe 3-4 times in your lifetime. For me, it's, emigrating from Ireland to the US was a huge decision. Leaving academia, I originally started off life as a PhD at the University of Chicago. Leaving academia to go into marketing was a huge decision. And these also are hard decisions to make rationally, because who am I making the decision based on? What country I live in will change me as a person. What career I pursue will change me as a person. Should I get married? Those decisions change you as a person. And so are you making decisions based on the utility of the person you are now, or the person you're going to become? And so ultimately, it's from a rational perspective, it's completely impossible to make those kinds of big life-changing decisions from a rational perspective. And it ends up, those really big decisions end up becoming a lot more kind of emotional, a lot more about who you aspire to be than any typical problem. And so that's how she thinks about different types of decisions: really tiny decisions, really complicated decisions, and really kind of big decisions. In many ways, it's very similar to the world of physics, where different types of decisions follow different types of scale, follow different types of law. And I kind of want to walk you through a couple of ways where I think this framework can help us kind of resolve some of the debates that marketers frequently find themselves in terms of what kinds of marketing is great marketing. So let's talk about pick and tiny decisions and the role of brand distinctivity. Some marketing decisions are a pick. They're tiny choices we really don't care about and we don't want to spend a lot of time on. Again, think about Bud Light versus Miller Lite. Honestly, regardless of which one a consumer chooses, their life will be fine. So what do you have to deal with there? Key thing there is like broad indifference. I don't care. The strategy when you're dealing with a tiny choice is brand distinctivity. This is the world of Byron Sharp. This is the world of Ehrenberg Bass. And if you're in the world of influencing picks, it leads to an obsession with distinctive brand assets. No one's going to engage in your advertising, so you might as well make it recognizable. You might as well make it memorable. And as much as possible, you're trying to at least kind of capture some cultural fame. And there's some great examples out there. So I think about Bud Light's campaign from last year, Dilly Dilly. Again, meaningless, stupid, but brilliant in terms of ensuring that brand was top of mind with a phrase that was broadly memorable. It kind of rhymed. So when you went into the liquor store, Bud Light was top of mind and you picked it up over Miller Lite. Why? Honestly, you don't care. You don't even think about it. It just drives that higher end cognitive fluency and it makes you kind of pick up that brand versus the other one. Another nice example of this is KFC. Again, the kernel. Why should you go to KFC versus Burger King versus McDonald's? Honestly, they're all the same. It's pretty good. What makes KFC sales go is that distinctive brand asset. It keeps the brand top of mind. It makes it memorable and helps you make what ultimately is a tiny pick. What do I want for lunch today? I don't really want to think about it too much. It's a tiny, tiny decision. And I think for a lot of marketers, they really need to kind of embrace the fact that within the world of consumers, we play a very, very small role. And once you realize that, it drives you down a very different type of marketing strategy around brand distinctivity, around cognitive ease, and making sure your brand is top of mind, and ideally, making your brand famous. So that's pick. Brand distinctivity, helping you make very small decisions. Let's talk about choices. Some marketing decisions are complicated. Thinking about what type of car you want to buy, thinking about what kind of home mortgage you want to buy, thinking about life insurance. These are kind of big-ish kind of problems that take up a lot of time. You want to get right. You're kind of heavily invested in. You want to feel like you've made a smart decision. And when you're dealing with these kinds of decisions, The key issue is it's complex. And so for really smart marketers, when they're dealing with consumers who are highly involved in the category, how do I kind of simplify that experience as much as possible? And this is really where customer experience, user experience really comes into the fore, where I'm trying to understand every step of the customer journey. I'm trying to understand how it is I can reduce friction, how it is I can reduce even the cognitive load, make choices as simple as possible, make the experience as personalized as possible. And this is where, you know, brands like Apple, like Amazon, like Starbucks, these great experience brands, it's less driven, some of them do have great advertising, but it's less driven by their advertising, and it's more driven by how seamless and frictionless that customer experience is. And this is where really kind of understanding how people are engaging with your brand and how you're structuring choices becomes incredibly important. A really nice example of this is a brand we worked on a couple of years ago, Valspar. They actually, it takes around over 100 days to kind of choose your color of paint. Again, it's a great example of a brand that people want to get their color of their house right. And we kind of developed this tool to kind of help make the choice less complicated. Really nice example of a brand that essentially, it didn't matter what brands were a top of mind consideration. The brands that win in this space are the brands that deliver the easiest, most frictionless experience. And this, again, very different type of marketing. It's very data driven, very personalized, very relevant, timely messages. That's all around individual utility. The third type of decision is when people want to change, when they want to change their lives. And this is, I don't think, probably the majority of consumer decisions. Again, we play a marginal role in types of most consumers' lives, but we are conscious that consumers do want to change. I think the problem with pick and choose is pick is about mindlessly going through life, just doing what's ever easy. Same with choose, it's about reducing friction. You just go with whatever's easiest. At a certain point, people develop habits, develop worldviews that they increasingly become dissatisfied with, and they want to change. They want to become a better person. Think about those times in your life where, you know what, maybe I'm not being the best version of myself that I can be. Maybe I am picking up that KFC bucket of chicken a little bit too much, haven't been working out quite as much as I should do. These are when people, they actually want to change. They want to change their lives and become a better version of themselves. And brands that can capitalize on this type of change, this desire for cultural change and personal change, can be incredibly successful. Because ultimately, these are brands that are helping people to find not just who I am, but who I want to be. So you think about brands that get obsessed with brand purpose and really are about being kind of socially relevant. Brands like Dove, they really were one of the first brands that kind of tapped into a real kind of revolt among women about how they were portrayed in the media and how increasingly they wanted to be portrayed in the media. And again, think about brands like Victoria's Secrets, brands that ignored this trend. Now they're seen as kind of culturally toxic. People don't want anything to do with them. So there's huge advantages to being kind of first as people want to change their lives. There's huge downsides to being last, where suddenly you become a brand where people, this doesn't stand for who I am anymore. Or Gillette, again, getting involved in the conversation of what does it mean to be a man? What does masculinity mean in the 21st century? And again, hard for a brand, a legacy brand like Gillette, to be silent in this space, where it could very easily become a symbol of a type of masculinity that quite literally is no longer seen as relevant and is often seen as toxic. Another nice example, probably in many ways a little bit more trivial, was Clorox. It's a brand we work on at FCB. A lot of people saw Clorox as just a cleaning brand. You think about a generation where you see memes online of clean house is a sign of a wasted life. Nobody wants to be defining themselves as a cleaner these days. But what we did with Clorox was really kind of dig into, what was it that cleaning enabled you to do? And you think about it, it allowed you to be in a safer environment, obviously incredibly relevant right now. It involved you to be in a calmer environment, a more productive environment. Actually, there's a lot of science that shows that if you're in a clean environment, you sleep better, your kids do better at school. So ultimately, we kind of reframed Clorox away from a kind of a menial cleaning brand into a brand that was all around kind of personal productivity, personal health, and personal flourishing. Far more culturally relevant, and has been really kind of successful for the brand ever since that. And obviously, current events have overtaken that, but it really set the brand up to be thought of in a far more kind of progressive way. So when you're thinking about consumers who want to change their lives, they're looking for brands that can be kind of part of that change that they want to do. People want to make decisions. The interesting thing, though, is we find that it's frequently, as we think about these three types of choices, there's small, meaningless choices, there's complicated choices, there's big, life-changing change. A lot of marketing is actually about a blend of all three. So you think about whenever I want to make a big change in my life, it leads to lots of small consumer purchases. It leads to lots of tiny picks. So think about a domestic light beer. Seems pretty meaningless. Seems pretty just not relevant to anything. But it became a brand that reflected who you wanted to be. That was Michelob Ultra. Michelob Ultra ended up being about part of a change where people increasingly wanted to be healthier, better versions of themselves, and simultaneously ended up being incredibly distinctive within the beer space, standing out from the cliches of domestic light beer, resulting in it becoming the largest volume growth in the beer category over the last 5 years, going from number 8 to number 2, combining people's desire to change with people making it really easy for people to pick. Or another, really nice example, there's a lot of customer experience brands out there, but honestly, they're not top of mind. They get ignored. And so sometimes you need to take that, how do I simplify this experience in a way that's going to make it distinctive and make it stand out? And that's what we did with Whopper Detour. Whopper Detour was downloading the Whopper app makes it easier to purchase your Whopper. But honestly, who wants to do that? There's a lot of things going on during your day. Whopper Detour, where we challenge people to go to a McDonald's so they could get a Burger King Whopper for 1 cent, generated so much fame, so much attention. It made the brand the #1 most downloaded app on the Apple App Store. It was an incredibly successful campaign. And then subsequently made it easier for people to order a Whopper because the app was already on their phone. So we got over that initial hurdle using distinctive cultural fame. And then finally, there's change. Probably one of my favorite examples, a piece of customer utility, helping people answer questions that actually changed your definition of love. And I will play this spot and talk a little bit more about it.
When we first found out, the initial feeling was devastation.
When do babies with Down syndrome learn to talk?
Is Down syndrome curable?
Can a person with Down syndrome get married? Yeah, everyone is not. It's not just people with who does not have Down syndrome. I hope to one day. I haven't found the Mr. Right yet, but I hope to.
Can a person with Down syndrome can ride a bike?
Yes, I can. Are Down syndrome babies bigger? No.
Do you live on your own? One day, my man. One day I will.
So really simple questions, they're answered here, and that just gives people the information they need to make an informed decision.
I hope that answers your question.
Really beautiful campaign. And think about nothing will change your life quite like should I have a child or not. And the decision to have a Down syndrome child changes your life even more. And so for marketers, they rarely have to deal with issues this big that will really have an impact on their consumers this much. But what was wonderful about this spot our FCB Toronto office did and campaign was they combined not just a point of view on how this could change your life, but also with all the complicated questions you have about what it means to live with a Down syndrome child, and more importantly though, what it means to have a child. So a really kind of powerful example of how combining these different approaches can lead to really powerful advertising. Ultimately, what I want to kind of reinforce though is that the world of marketing deals with different scales of decisions. Some are picks, some are choices, some are changes. And we need to become aware of the type of scale that we're dealing with and how they interact and overlap so that we all get aligned on what looks great here. Too often we haven't decided what kind of decision we're dealing with, and as a consequence, we're actually arguing about what kind of marketing we're dealing with. Once we understand the kind of decisions, it's a lot clearer the type of marketing we need to implement. Thank you so much.